Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology and leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing, mixed in with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme and how to bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through and take inspired action to make our lives better. So grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. Stephanie here, the head bookologist and host here at Get Literate, with a special introduction to today's guest. When I first started dreaming and planning for this podcast, I made a lot of lists. Surprise, surprise, I know. One of those lists was a list of dream guests that I would love to invite on the podcast to talk to. These are the kinds of guests where you'd need to pinch me if it actually came true. And today is a pinch me kind of day. Why? Well, because I have Sarah Hart Unger of Best Laid Plans here on the podcast. Oh, I'm so excited. I have been a longtime listener to Sarah's show, Best Laid Plans, for a while now, and I adore it. It's one of the ones that I listen to on the day that it's released. It's all about planning, especially paper planning. Yeah, a podcast dedicated entirely to all things planning and planning adjacent. So we talk about, or better worded, Sarah talks about, and I listen, how to plan, why we plan, when we should plan, which kind of planners are best, which kinds of pens are best, which kind of paper is best. We talk about all the things. But it's not just the content that I love about the podcast. Honestly, it's Sarah herself. She is real. She is one of us. She's a busy physician. She's a mom of 3, yet she still makes time in her days, in her weeks, in her months, in her quarters, and her years to plan out her days with great results. When you listen to the podcast, you can feel her energy. You can feel her passion for planning, certainly. And because of her, I've learned so much about how to plan my days to get the most out of them. Not only that, I've learned to indulge the little things I love, like how heavy and how the paper feels in a notebook, and just giving myself a couple of minutes a day to plan proactively so that I can have the best kind of day I can. I am thrilled to let you in on the conversation that we had where we talked about all things planning. We talked about the how and the why. We talked about how to plan for this special back to school season. And she even gave us some inside scoops on her favorite notebooks, planners, agendas, tools, and supplies too. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Sarah Hart Unger. Sarah, welcome to the Get Literate podcast. I am beyond excited to talk all things planning with you today.
I am always excited to talk all things planning, so this is going to be so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, of course. So I have been a longtime listener of your podcast, Best Laid Plans, for a while. And you really are the guide that I look to when it comes to planning, whether it's planning my day, my week, my year, my quintile, my quarter. I'm learning all sorts of things from you, or choosing the perfect planner and the perfect paper to just make life feel better. I've learned so much. I think I've saved a lot of time. I've set a lot of goals. And I am just so excited to talk all of those things with you today. I feel like a kid on Christmas because I've listened to you in my headphones for so long, And now I actually, even though listeners can't see, I actually can match a face with the voice, and I can't wait to get started. So again, thank you for being here. And why don't you jump in and tell listeners who you are, where you are, and how planning became your thing that you're really known for.
Yes. Well, that was an incredibly kind intro. Thank you so much. I feel like I don't deserve all that, but I appreciate it.
You
So,
do.
my name is Sarah Hart Unger, and well, I'll just give a little background. So, I have three children, ages 5, 9, and 11, and I'm a physician as a pediatric endocrinologist, still practicing. I am part-time currently. And on the side of all that, over the years, I have grown a website and now a couple of podcasts and really found one of my passions in helping others learn to enjoy planning more and plan more effectively. So, I mean, I started writing and kind of pouring my heart out all the way back in 2004. So, I'm kind of like one of those internet dinosaurs. And you never know when you start something like that where it is going to lead. But I found that one of the things that resonated with my readers and that I loved writing about was planning. And it like started with kind of rudimentary, hey, like, and this is like before social media, like I had a digital camera and I would upload these images of like my weekly planner with my tasks on the right and like my to-dos on the left, and kind of like looking at how my week was going to go and how I like to plan my weekends because I was really busy. I was in residency. My husband is also a physician, he's a surgeon. His residency was crazy, so I ended up doing a lot of the household management at the same time. And then, of course, adding a child to the mix, which I did kind of towards the end of my medical training. Um, that's when I was like, okay, I need like bulletproof systems. I need so many ways of knowing, what are my priorities? How am I going to use my limited time in the best way possible, or the ways that serve me the best? How am I going to not like get stressed out by the many loose ends that are thrown at me from many different directions? Because, even as a fellow, I had like the clinical world, I had the lab, I had all these like graduation requirements, but then I also had the daycare calling me, and,
Yeah.
my husband's family wanted us to come visit. And it was just like, the inputs kept coming and I needed to make sure I had systems to deal with them. And I had some really important formative influences. Number one is probably kind of nerdy. The Getting Things Done book by David Allen. Huge influence on me. I think it's like, it's kind of dated, but it's also not. So it's a fantastic resource that kind of just got me started about like, hey, you can actually like have some rock solid techniques over managing all this stuff that will make you feel better. So that was number one. And probably number two was Laura Vanderkam's 168 Hours, which came out in like 2009 or 10 or something. And I read it and I found it fascinating, as well as like just the way she kind of thought about time in ways that I hadn't really I don't know, constructed before for myself. And then fast forward, I'm still writing this blog and Laura starts commenting on my blog because I guess she found me once I linked to her book. And then like several years later, we're friends and are doing a podcast together. So I don't know, it's been a long journey, but I really remain passionate about helping people find ways to plan and organize their lives that are fun and that serve them, and sharing that with the world. So here we are.
Here we are. And I can totally relate to the moment when you figured out planning needed to be a thing, like when all of it was coming at you. My kids are grown now. I have a just turned 19-year-old and 16-year-old twins. But when they were little, I remember my son was 2 and my twins were just born. And I thought, how in the world am I going to do this with the little kids and the job and all the things? And I remember I got, those big giant sticky chart papers, and I put them up all along my kitchen wall. And it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I literally had colored sticky notes that then was like, okay, this is nap time. This is playtime. And I needed to see it. I needed it visually. And one of the babysitters that was coming in to help me one day after school came in and she goes, like, was Super Nanny here? Like, what has happened to your kitchen? I'm like, this is the only way I can breathe, is if I can see it. And then I'm not so overwhelmed by all that it is, even though it is a lot, and I can manage it. So I totally can relate to the moment when you realize you need something, and that something is either a planner or a notebook or sticky notes or chart paper and really cool pens to make it even better. So I love that our moments kind of collide, of you kind of hit a point where you realize, okay, I need a little bit of help, and planning can be that thing that can change everything.
Yeah, this stuff cannot live in your head. And I can't even imagine the whirlwind of baby twins and a toddler at the same time. So that's a perfect example of like, no, too much coming at me at once. If I'm going to survive the day and not be incredibly stressed out about like, what am I missing? What am I not thinking about? Then you better have some way of putting that in front of you in a tangible form. And I love that what worked best for you, because you were probably running around like crazy, was Post-it notes on the wall. That is awesome.
Yes. That is what worked. And I'll have to get out the pictures of them because I remember taking pictures like, I wonder if people are going to believe that this is what my home looks like right now, but it works. So I get it. I get the planning, and I know you are an upholder and Gretchen Rubin's framework as well. I love Gretchen Rubin. And as a fellow upholder, like I get it. The planning, the calendar, all of the things have to be accounted for, because if they are, then I can feel like I can accomplish them. But I know there might be others out there who are not upholders, or who didn't have the moment like we had when we realized that maybe planning could and should be a really important priority in our lives. So I would love if you would share why you think planning, you touched upon a little bit, but why should planning be such a priority or an important practice in our lives, especially if someone doesn't do it yet? What would you say to convince them?
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to actually go through the entire Gretchen Rubin personality framework and talk about what planning could do for each type, but I feel like that would take a while, so I won't do that. But
I
I'll
think you
say
should do that on your episode. That's a good episode for best laid plans.
I feel like I'll need to have Gretchen back on again if I'm going to do
Yes.
that. So maybe I can convince her. I did have her on once. Um, anyway, so I mean, I think planning does a couple of things for us. Number one, it helps us when we have bigger picture goals that come at us in a more abstract way. A lot of times, if we have a lot going on, the only way we're going to be able to kind of break those down and start to make consistent steps in the direction of those goals is to spend some time planning and thinking about where are they going to fit in. Planning is also prioritization. So planning is not, a pipe dream of being able to do everything. It's actually the deliberate act of choosing what is important to you in this season, and what, are ideas that might want to be kept for later, that you're not going to be dealing with right now. And I'll say the other kind of flip side of the coin, so there's the kind of being able to move in the directions that you truly want to go in the long term, but also not being stressed out in the moment about what you have to do. So the ability to actually create a realistic plan for your day kind of depends on really understanding what you have on your plate and what your priorities are. And once you're able to do that, actually sit down, have a ritual where you craft, these are my priorities today. This is what I have on my plate. These are like the small things I'm going to do to move myself towards the goals. You can then breathe, because you know that there's other stuff out there, but you're not going to deal with them today. Like,
Yeah.
As Oliver Berkman says, like, you're not going to get everything done. Life is finite, but you've zeroed in on like what makes sense in the confines of the next 24 hours, unless, crazy disasters strike. So I think it's kind of like two sides of the coin. One is kind of like being less stressed in the moment and really understanding what your priorities are in the small scale. And the other is being able to actually move towards the things you dream about on the larger scale. And I love planning for both of those reasons.
Yes, you do. And actually, I was always a bigger planner. I loved doing the longer term forecasting, right? I could dreamscape, I could vision board, I could do all that. But the more tangible, okay, how do I get there part, right, is the part that a lot of us need our help with. And I'm a weekly planner. I love looking at the week. I've got the to-do lists for every day of the week in my notebook. But what you've helped me with is the daily planning and the intention setting in the morning. I had an idea. I knew what my day was going to look like, but I never took the 5-10 minutes in the morning to just be with the planner, to be with the schedule, and to really think it through. And that has made a big difference in how I approach my day, especially in the days that are busy. When I want to skip that, I know I can't, because just that 5 minutes of it'll be okay, you're going to be able to get it done has made a really big difference for me. So that daily planning, I never did it. And I'm glad that you have convinced me to start.
And I think part of the power of daily planning is actually deciding what you're not going to do. So
Mm,
if you have your weekly spread in front of you and you're like, okay, I want to get this thing done for the week, but you're like, I have 7 hours of meetings today. If you have this vague idea that, oh my God, I have to get all this stuff done for the week, it might be like nagging on you all day, but if you sat down that morning and been like, I got 7 hours of meeting, I have time for one task. I'm going to pick the most important task, and everything else we're going to look at in tomorrow morning's planning session because this is all I can do. You will feel so much better than if you just have this vague itch that you have so many things going on in the background, but what are they and what should I do first? Like, you've decided once and then you've moved on, and you can, like, again, I don't know that everybody suffers from this same type of stress, but I think that I do, and it sounds like you do, and that's one thing that has made this practice like so valuable for me. It's like what I'm doing and what I'm not doing.
I don't do that enough. I'm still focused on the what I'm doing. I am going to start trying that, the what I am not doing, especially right now at this time of year. And one of the things I was hoping to ask you about was that back to school season, which we are now in right now. And I know lots of us think of the back to school season as a second New Year's, a second chance to kind of set some goals at the end of the year, but it's busy. It's very busy. And just this week alone, running to, oh, I forgot the new lunch boxes. And oh, well, wait a minute. Did I get the right folders for the kids? And do we have the, number 2 pencils? And I spent so much time thinking of what I had to do. If I just said, you know what, today I can let go of X because this week this demands that, that would have been a nice little game changer, especially as we think about those different seasons. So tomorrow is going to be what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do.
And it's about creating that list for your day that's actually realistic and takes into the confines of your energy, which is absolutely going to be impacted by adopting new seasonal rhythms. So we really need to like keep that in mind. And also, again, the landscape of the day. And that might include any like things that are going to take 10 times longer just because they are new. Although I have a back to school story. Yesterday at like 10 p.m., no, maybe not 10. I think it was like 9. It was like bedtime. My daughter's like, I need a box of ronzoni spaghetti for tomorrow. Because they're doing some like bridge building project, and I'm like, nope. Like, I can't, those kind of requests. Like, yeah. And then it turned out she wasn't even correct, but it was just so, I was like, that is just like perfect back to school. Like, really? Like,
yes. And that's exactly how it works. It's a random, it reminds me of that commercial where the little boy hands his mom the flyer that says bake sale, September 6th. And she looks at the calendar and it's the 6th. And just some things can't be accomplished, in the moment like that. That's a very specific request.
I think they're like building a bridge and it needs to be like uniform, so like nobody has an advantage because their spaghetti is sturdier than somebody else's spaghetti. But I thought it was really funny.
That is funny. So I would love for you, because we've talked a little bit about long-term planning in the moment. I talked about daily planning. I know a little bit about this because I listen to every episode, but tell everybody, let's get a little more specific. What does your planning look like?
Yes. Well, two things. I'm going to say, if you want like the hugest deep dive into like my whole system, there is an episode, I can send you the link to it, called like How Sarah Plans Your Life.
Yes. Yes.
It is one of my most popular episodes, in part because it was linked to by like a newspaper. So like a lot of people have heard that particular one. And I go into like major detail in that one. But I will say the overarching principle is something that I have named and have not trademarked, but that's okay. Nested goals. And what that means is creating a set of goals at every time horizon, but then as the horizons narrow, kind of looking to the horizon above that. Now, I'm going to give an example because that sounds really vague. But let's say you have your set of yearly goals. You sat down in December and you were like, I'm going to make an excellent set of 2024 goals, and then you're starting to kind of plan your season. Well, as you plan your season, maybe it's January to, I use quintiles, which we can talk about a little bit, but as let's say you're planning Q1 of the year and you're like, well, where am I going to get my inspo from here? You look to your above level of goals. So hey, I'll look at my annual goals and I'll think about what is going on in my life and the current seasonal energy. You need both. You don't just want to like plop a bunch of, annual goals on the list because they're goals 1 through 4 and you like want to get them done in order. No, like use that list as inspiration, choose what makes sense, and add what kind of feels right for that given season. Maybe you have certain travel coming up that you need to plan, or you have a conference that you need to prep for that's a month, so you have to keep that in mind as well, even if that's not on your annual list. And then that works at the lower levels as well. So as you're planning your week, you can actually look at, okay, what do I have going on this week? But also, what were my seasonal goals? Or some people also like to have a level of monthly goals. But if you don't, you just look at your season. What did I want to do this season? And is there anything that translates to what I want to fit in this week? And then same with the day. So as you're planning your day, and I do this, I look at my list of little weekly, they're not usually like goals on the weekly level, they're more like tasks or like steps. Because to me, goals can usually connote something a little bit bigger. But I'll look at what's on kind of on deck for the week, and then for that day, based on my energy and my schedule, I'm choosing what makes sense to put on for that day. And everything doesn't get done, and stuff gets migrated, and stuff gets changed, and it's fluid. And you're definitely not creating every seasonal goal at the start of the year. Like, don't touch your Q4 goals in January. You're going to make those right when Q4 is coming up. But by kind of having this big list that you're working from and then drilling down, it means you don't forget the big things that are important to you. But the system is also flexible enough to kind of move with you as life changes. So I call it nested goals, and that really does inform how I do my planning. And then in terms of like actually the time I spend doing it, just like you said, it's a few minutes in the morning. It's like an hour or two on Friday afternoons for my weekly session. It is usually a little bit of a longer seasonal session, sometimes even something as elaborate as like a little planning retreat with my husband. That's obviously we can't do that every season, but when it works. And then a much kind of bigger, more formal annual session. So I kind of practice what I preach, and I do all this goal setting, and I have to say it seems to work pretty well for me. So, and it does seem to have helped a lot of others that have written me and stuff. So I really love it. I'm sure I'll continue to hone it, over the years and everything, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts. And you'll notice I didn't mention any particular product. I did not mention, digital versus paper. I have like some thoughts and personal preferences about that, but I think that many tools can work for many people. If someone forced me to go all digital, I could do it. I prefer not to, but I'm pretty open to a lot of different types of tools, which is why I enjoy reviewing different planners, because I don't think there is like one perfect planner. People are like, why don't you make a planner and sell it? And I'm like, because I think like I like really open-ended products, and I think that there are many different planners that fit many different people and preferences. So I
Yeah.
embrace the diversity out there in planning solutions.
Well, I've got a couple of things. I'm like, okay, I've got to say one thing, then I have another question. Number one, I do think you need to make your own planner. Just for the record, I'm one of those people who are talking to you from her car saying, yes, yes, you do. Take all the good stuff that you love from all the different ways you plan and put it together. And no, it might not be right for everyone, but I think a lot of us would love to see what that could look like. So I just had to get that out in the open, because I'm usually telling you that and you're not there to hear it, but now you are. So there's number one. And then the second thing, as you were talking about the way that you plan, I mean, I know planning, people may think of a particular thing with planning, oh, it's a calendar and it's an agenda, it's a notebook. But it really is so much more, because your way of thinking about your nested goals and your nested planning, it's making sure you're living the kind of life you want to live. And it's reminding you of that on a weekly or monthly or daily basis, that, yeah, the planning is the thing, but it just keeps you constantly in line and constantly a reminder of, is this how I want my day to go? I can't ever remember who said it, but someone or a lot of someone's say, the way you spend your days is the way you spend your life. And your planning system with all those different built-in check-ins, to me, it's less about planning and more about just creating the kind of life you want. And the planner just keeps us on track for getting there. It really is much bigger than some people think of, oh, mom's got her calendar out. No, it's way bigger than that.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I love that phrase. How you spend your days is how you spend your life. I mean, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to remember where I found it first, but I think a lot of people say it, here, there, everywhere, because it is so powerful. Now, I know that you mentioned that you don't have one favorite, and that, you digital and analog and all the things, but can I ask what some of your maybe favorites are? Because I know you talk about them and I know some of them.
Oh, I
And
have personal favorites. I just don't think I have like,
oh, okay.
people are like, "What's the perfect planner?" And I'm like, "Well, that depends." But of
Right.
course, I have many favorites. They're like,
Okay, tell us all of them.
well, I love Hobonichi, and Hobonichi is a Japanese brand of planners. They're very open ended. There's not a lot of like, they're never going to be like, put your shopping list here. Like, they're just, space to plan your week with hourly markings, so you can really draw it out to scale and see what your week looks like. And then blank graph paper pages to plan your day, and it's very thin, very nice paper that kind of all fits it together in one book. And I've been using them for years. I love their stuff, and mine actually is coming today for next year. I ordered it from Japan, as I do.
Yay.
It's like a yearly ritual. Super excited about that. I also really enjoy Erin Condren products just because I love their designs. I love her paper, that company's paper. I mean, I even love the smell of it. When I get an order, I'm like, ah, Erin Condren. Like, it feels a certain way. It takes my gel pens a certain way. And they just have a ton of like really fun and functional layouts. So if I had to pick two companies that I was like most like enamored with their products consistently, those would probably be it. I also love various pens that are usually Japanese based. I order a lot from Jet Pens. I love, like, Pentel is a brand that obviously makes a lot of pens in the US, but somehow what they make for the Japanese market is like better. And so I order a lot of pens from Jet Pens. I like the Pilot Juice Up. I like the Pentel Energel Clenna. I, of course, really enjoy the Zebra Mild Liners, which is a highlighter that used to be kind of exotic, and now I feel like they're everywhere, which I love because they're awesome. I like these little Zig clean color dot markers to make like cute little circles. And I'm not like a really big decorative planner. I'm actually like, I mostly just use pen and highlighter. I mean, I'll throw in a sticker for fun or like some washi tape, like to mark out where my vacation is or something, but I'm not like one of those cover your paper with 80 stickers. If that makes you happy, totally do it. But I tend to be a little bit more like, no, I actually like want to be able to see where all my stuff is on this page, and I don't add a ton of extras. And then electronically, I actually love Apple Notes. It's just such a functional digital filing cabinet for me. I even love their new scan feature. So like if I get like the kids' health forms, I'll use the little scanner and then I can save them, and like they're easily accessible. I can forward them, like whatever. I use it to draft all of my podcast episodes. Fun fact, like I always open up a little Apple Notes and then I archive them when they're done so I can really search and find anything. So that is my kind of like favorite digital tool. I know a lot of people love Notion. A lot of people love just using like the Google franchise of stuff. So I mean,
Yeah,
there's
I'm
no
a
one
Google
right
Keep kind of
thing. You're a
person. Yep.
Googler,
Yep.
but yeah, Apple Notes is like my favorite, very simple but effective kind of
Yeah.
digital filing cabinet slash notes tool.
Yeah. Well, I think your response to this question is why I love you and your podcast so much, because you have specific pens and you know the names of them right off the bat, and you know the paper and you smell paper. And that's why I think your passion for it just comes through. I was certainly here, but on the podcast as well. And it's like I found my people, right? That we really value that. Digital is great, yes, and I use digital, but there's just nothing like feeling the notebook and feeling whatever pen it is glide in a particular way across the page. And I think for me, that's part of the grounding, like just calm me down, let me get my brain dump out, let me figure out what it looks like. But for me, it really is the act of doing it the old fashioned way. I do have my weekly Google Keep sticky notes Monday through Saturday or Monday through Sunday. Um, but I love that you are just as enamored with the paper and the pens and the things as my community is, because they are really going to resonate and connect with you when you just rattled off all of those really cool pens that we are now going to go online and find.
Yes, because you might as well make the process really fun and enjoyable for you, especially since it is something that I advocate doing every single day, and then to some
Right.
extent in a larger way every week and every so often. So make
Yeah.
it fun, make it enjoyable. And I always say life is too. I don't know if I said it. I think I might have heard it somewhere, but life is too short to use bad pens. Like, don't use bad pens.
Yes. I love it. I love it. And also, you really stress there is no wrong way to do it. If you want to bling it up and you like watercolors and the artistic side, go for it. Or if you just want your pencils and your highlighters, then that works too. And I really appreciate that about you and your podcast, because you are constantly you're talking about what works for you, but then you have options for other people who think differently. So we can visualize it and imagine what it looks like. And then therefore it's accessible, right, to anyone. So I really appreciate that part of your philosophy.
Yeah, and the truth is like, many products can work. Like I've played with so many planners, and if you told me, well, this is the one you have for next year, a lot of times you can find a way to make something work for you, as long as it's not a bad pen. There are many ways to use different things, and it is fun to dabble and try. And if you feel like you just need some little push for a new season, sometimes a new notebook or a quarterly planner or something like that can really help. And it tends to be a fairly low investment compared to some things you could be doing for a jump start.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think too, which I love about your philosophy, is if it doesn't work, you don't force it to work. You will abandon a planner in the middle of the year, and your stack in the beginning of the year might not be the stack that you're using at the end of the year, and that's okay. And for so many of us, we look at a blank notebook and we get scared. We don't want to mess it up. What if we write the wrong thing, and what are we going to do with it? And then we end up having stacks of notebooks and journals and planners that we don't use. And here you come along and say, I'm using it in the beginning of the year. I don't know, maybe I'll make it to March. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll completely use it differently in the summer. And it's just so refreshing to know that the rest of the world who loves planners and notebooks thinks this way too. And you just give permission to let it be whatever it needs to be for any of us.
And now that I have kids, the ages that I do, if I find a product really isn't working, I have eager, I don't know, users. Like there's a lot of like half-used planners that are now filled with like cat, rat, bat for my 5-year-old. So yes,
Right,
can
whatever works.
repurpose in many different ways.
That's right. That's right. Well, as we kind of close out the episode, do you have any final tips for making planning a positive practice in our lives?
Yeah, just give yourself the challenge to just give yourself the time to do it in your busiest periods, especially if you have that antsy feeling like I'm too busy to plan, I have too much to do, I can't plan. That's
Yeah.
exactly when you need to sit there and actually
Yes.
craft a very purposeful plan for your day. You can get started with just one day and see how that works for you, and then you can hone and tweak your system going forward. Also, I highly recommend, if you just find yourself like wanting to hear somebody's really in-depth methods, getting things done is a really fun first resource to hear someone just go on for pages and pages about a system of planning. Even if you don't adapt everything in his system, you might find something. Or if you want my systems, I actually have an online course called Best Laid Plans Academy. By the time this airs, actually, I think it's going to be closed, to be honest. I'm about over capacity for this season, but it will be back next year, and I'll be doing some really fun things coming up to help you plan your 2024. So I haven't announced anything officially yet, but that is in the works, as well as a live retreat, which is going to be amazing. We already have so many wonderful women signed up to join me in Fort Lauderdale in November to actually plan our year together. So if that interests you, that is an option as well.
Oh, it interests me. I just don't know if I can get to Florida for that, but that's on my bucket list. That is on my bucket list for sure. Where can listeners find out about all of those things so they can find you?
Yes. So my website is theshoebox.com. I know it's like an old school name because it's an old school website, but it's
I love it though.
if you want like an early aughts, blog mixed with today's, I don't know, check it out. It's theshubox.com. And then my two podcasts, well, one of them I co-host with Laura Vanderkam. That's called Best of Both Worlds. That's available on all podcast platforms. And then Best Laid Plans is my own podcast on all things planning and planning adjacent, and that is on all podcast platforms as well.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I hope everyone who has not taken a listen to that will go hop over and listen and subscribe and just follow along, whether it's your planning stack or the questions that you tackle that everyone writes in, to the reviews. I love the reviews. I love the reviews. They're one of my favorites. That's why I have a stack of them over there. So this was so much fun. Thank you so much for taking the time out. You're so busy, but you made time because of planning. So I appreciate that. And
There's always time for a fun conversation. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. Plus, if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, bibliotherapy book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much, much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing, if you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.